Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Booking here at Flurry Sports. It's so nice to have you. Uh, Ringworm, whatever we're calling, I don't know why I'm so unconfident. It's Ringworm. We're digging into it a little bit, we're getting the nitty gritty. And this week, get into nitty gritty on a topic we've covered briefly. So if you've seen our video on how we would book, how I would book the Bloodline Civil War, you're ahead of the game. Spoilers, here we are, post SummerSlam. Roman's back. I don't think they're doing the Paul Heyman mashup that we pitched. I don't think they're going that route, but instead we will acknowledge the one and only Tribal Chief. All vibes are good as Roman returns. Again, we're recording this directly after that. So here's what we know and where this story is going from. Today we are going to be booking, how does Roman Reigns and how should he regain his title? He held it for 1,316 days. And, ever since the Tribal Chief has left, you could argue he's never been more over, never been more appreciated at the very least. And so to truly give acknowledgement to our OTC, we talked today. How should Roman get back into the picture? What do we want to see? I think what WWE is setting up right now is, I think it's a little hard to see past War Games. I think the first thing that's kind of set up is this Bloodline Civil War. And then, though, where are we at? And as you listen to this and as events unfold, you might have a more clear picture. But as I record this right now, literally as Raw is happening on August 5th, we're still a little murky on how much are we rooting for Roman. The pop he got for his return was monstrous. I think he's going to be cheered no matter what he does. I think, spoiler for a little bit of the pitch, I think you get to ride on that. I don't think, going off of my last video, I covered what I thought WWE was going to do. So here I'll just say that I don't think he needs to be a different character to be cheered. I think certainly less manipulative. And we can talk about how much comeuppance a character like Roman needs. He really put everybody else through shit in character. Maybe he's a great guy, but in character, he's put us all through the ringer. His family's been treated like garbage. Now coming back to a spot where he's been usurped, can he really begrudge Solo? And is his goal even to destroy the new bloodline? Or what I think the direction we're going in is, which is he sees this new, powerful threat bloodline as, once again, a tool he can use. So how do we get Roman back his title? Well, I'm going to start with this, and maybe this won't surprise folks. I think it's going to be a while. I think my big pitch today, we've got a few goals, as always, for our pitches today. Our goal one, I just think this is how I would do it. I think Roman's got to earn his title back. And I think you could give it to him at any time, but then we immediately, it's too soon, because I can feel this as soon as I say it, and hopefully you do too. Once Roman has the title, it's like he never lost it. Like all of a sudden we're like, and now who takes it off him? That I just don't find as interesting right now. I think that's got to be built up. And I think the best way to do that is that by the time he gets the title, he's firmly a more babyface character. Is he full on babyface? I wouldn't go that route, but I do think that he is perhaps more acknowledged his own past sins, his own past bereavements, and rather than going back into the Tribal Chief bag, he's had to somewhat turn a new leaf, or perhaps gotten a taste of his own medicine along the way. I think he's got to earn that. Part two, I think we've got to hit some other story beats first. I think this is the best thing going in wrestling. I think this is the best thing going in WWE in terms of a long-term storyline. I don't think you took it from him just to give it back. I think what's more interesting is, to use a metaphor, you gave us this, you tied us in knots, right? You laid all this out. You put the puzzle pieces together. Now we could just cut the string, cut the cord, story over, get to the back. Or you've put so much work into tangling up all these knots and storyline threads. we could untangle them one at a time. And I think that if you can do it right, and the whole thing with the Bloodline storyline is pacing and drag out. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to do what I think WWE is going to do and make this a 2-year storyline. I will tell you right now, this pitch starts at SummerSlam, it ends at SummerSlam. That's how we're pitching it here today in terms of how Roman regains his title. I think I'm going to base off some things I said in my previous video. So if you haven't seen that Bloodline video, know that I'm obviously changing things. We're going to different War Games match, a different version of Bloodline Civil War, but you're going to hear some similarities. So you might want to watch that one first. And thank you so much for supporting all of our content. If we can get to 20,000 subscribers by the time the Royal Rumble comes around, we're going to do a full Royal Rumble stream in full Big Papa Pump. That was terrible. Big Papa Pump. I'm just saying normal. Scott Steiner attire, which I think just means chainmail and sunglasses, maybe a goatee if I can make it happen. But thank you so much. And for our pitch today, let's get started. No further waiting. We have kicked off on the SummerSlam after show. We see Roman return. We see him stare down Cody Rhodes. Most importantly, we see him cost Solo Sikoa the WWE title. Now we get to SmackDown, and I think this is where we see Roman's direction. I think, again, Roman's pitch has always been power and control. I think it's one thing to bring him back and have him so obviously against the new Bloodline. I mean, Solo at this point has pretty out and out been like, I'm in charge, not Roman. He's made it more obvious than I thought they were going to go, and I've liked it. I thought it was going to be obvious to Roman, but maybe not everyone else of, oh, is Solo doing this for Roman or pretending to? No, he's been pretty upfront of, I don't think Roman's coming back. I'm the one in charge. Now that Roman's back, here's what I need for Solo's character. And this, some people don't give two shits about this, and I think that's fair. I like the work they've put into Solo. I think if you give the fans what I think some of us have been expecting and thinking, which is Roman's back, Solo is immediately a B player. Honestly, I think what's hurt Solo this whole time is the assumption that he's never been the A character in the story because somewhere there's a Rock, even in storyline, pulling all the strings. Like, he's not even the main character now when he's been running this crew. So I think he's got to stand up to Roman a little bit. So I think on Friday, I think what I want the direction to be is that Roman is going back to reclaim what he lost, but I think is going to find a bloodline that has no allegiance to him beyond Solo. So Solo is really, I also think a bloodline that, again, rather than, he didn't come back and out do as much damage to them as he could have. I think we smartly are saving some in the tank for that. I think what we're building to is Roman once again trying to take control of this group. And so the direction I would rather us take, because again, I think our next stop is that is kind of signposted at this point, is War Games with a couple groups. And so I think we get there. And so to build that in our return SmackDown in the coming weeks, what I would have Roman lay is, I think, that fake pride that he's so good. And I think we saw him beat up and challenge multiple family members, right? Along the way to his past dominance and his past tribal chief. I think, why wouldn't he try and do that again? So rather than just cast Solo into the woods, I think the goal will be to beat this new bloodline into submission. And so I think we get a fake pride from Roman of, look at everything you've accomplished, you know. And what I really want to see in this promo for Roman is something along to the lines of, you know, I am proud that you called out Cody Rhodes. I'm proud that you wanted to bring the title back to the bloodline. I'm proud that when you thought Paul Heyman was stepping on your control and your moxie, you took it into your own hands to take charge. I'm even proud that you brought in folks we're not even related to, you know, a little tongue in cheek, but you made the bloodline stronger. You helped the bloodline run deeper than it ever has before, but you did it without the head of the table. And that's where you screwed up. I like the idea that really the only thing Roman cares about is, where's my piece of the pie, right? Like, he doesn't, nothing Solo has done is off what Roman would do. I think even the Paul Heyman pieces, which hopefully we get back to, and I'm going to pitch that we do coming up here in a second, but I think Roman would be on board with all that if it suited Roman. And I think he'd be pretty thrilled that the Bloodline is in a better spot. And I think you can very much argue than when he just disappeared. But it's not for Roman right now, is it? And I think that's going to be his issue. And so what I would set up going forward, and I think this is going to swerve some folks a little bit, but I think we set up basically that Roman is disappointed that wants the Bloodline to fall back in, but Solo's not having it. And I think Solo's like, listen, even when you were in charge at the end, I was the one saving your behind. I was the one coming in, finishing off Cody Rhodes and all these different pieces. And by the way, if you weren't at SummerSlam, I would have finished off Cody Rhodes there. And this brings out Cody Rhodes. I would like to see a couple things leading up to War Games, which as we record this is a couple months away. I think and I should say, as I talk about this, it's going to be Survivor Series. I think we're all assuming that it's going to be a War Games match once again. And I think as we build up to that, listen, it's August now. We got to get all the way to November, which is where it gets tricky. I just think that with this juicy Bloodline story, you want to get this big payoff of that War Games match. I think right now the pitch, and it's a good one, is that you get OG Bloodline versus new Bloodline. And you do have the time to build it up. I'm going to stick by this part of my previous pitch of the Bloodline match, which is, no, we're not going the Paul Heyman route. But I do not want to see a full OG Bloodline here. I just think it's too soon. I think that too soon for the sense. They might do that, and I think they will. But I give it a year. Like, revisit this then, because I think we're going to go through The Rock and different pieces, and hopefully in a year this is even more established. And especially because I want the new Bloodline to win here. And I think, you know, if we think through this logically and where the story goes, I think what is natural and fitting and what I'm going to pitch is that we build to a match that, again, is auditioning to Roman, this new Bloodline idea. And do you have him turn on everyone he's recruited in a few months? Because it just makes all of them look so dumb. And maybe they do it really well and tell a good story. But if I got to watch 3 months of him convincing Sami Zayn and Jey Uso that no, this time it's different, and everyone's going, no, and then they agree, and once again, it's not any different, they look stupid, right? That's not, like, why would they help and trust Roman Reigns at this point? Again, I know they will put in the work in different things, but nothing he's done so far hasn't been self-serving. And I don't think we've got time to build that character trait in yet of, like, what good is it for them at this point? I think the Jimmy angle is the way they could get back into it. But what I'm going to pitch instead is this. So Cody comes back out in our first promo back where Roman is addressing Solo. And I think we build to, and this is going to kind of be like an interesting wrinkle of, I would have Roman almost empower Solo instead of a full-on power struggle right away. Roman's like, prove it. Cody's right here. Cody also is kind of twisting the knife in the Roman of, like, maybe you would have beat me. Like, you needed all that help. And what's the difference there? And so I think we get one more, I hope, validating and clean clash for Solo. That, I think at this point, like, this last match was okay, but there was a lot of shenanigans, and it was basically all waiting for the interference spot, which you could make a criticism of many Bloodline matches, the one at SummerSlam, of, okay, is anything really happening, and have we built Solo? So I want a Clash at Berlin match. I would love to see a Solo Sikoa who can really hold his own with Cody. And what I would see instead is he bans the rest of Bloodline except Roman is at the side, because he's going to prove to Roman that, you were never going to give me the spot, so I'm going to take it. So all these things, I think Roman's there. I think he's getting in both people's heads. I think in the build up to it, Roman is, trying to undercut, because if he can, he'd just like to be manipulative. So I think he's trying to undercut Solo. This keeps him off TV a little bit, which again, I'm trying to be realistic of how much Roman's going to be around. And so I think we get there. I think in a turn of events, hopefully a nice contradiction from SummerSlam, because it keeps every plate spinning. I think Roman continues to screw folks over, but this time, instead of spiting Cody Rhodes by, inserting himself and being like, well, Cody, who knows if you would have won without me? I'm coming for that title, and screwing over Solo. I think you could go a couple different routes. I really think it'd be cool if you were bold. You'd have him help Solo win. No one would see it coming. I think it's such a nice wrinkle of, Solo brings it in and Roman just tells him to lay down. That would be, if you want to go this, I will pitch you the safe route because they all end at the same spot. So I think the safe version of this, which I could see them doing, is Roman once again interferes, but it's because he sees that Solo is gonna win. And so I think you could do it one of two ways. I think that is a compelling route that's a little replicative, but it leads to Solo Roman, which I think we need to get to next a little more clearly. And so that's going to be route I say here, but I do think you could listen. We just made Gunther champ. Some of these people need to lose belts a little bit more frequently. And I could totally see Cody being the type of guy who puts a belt on Solo to help make the man a little bit and get us rolling in that. Because otherwise, Cody holding it until someone takes it off of him at Mania and different things. I feel like one thing WWE is missing at times is that unpredictability at the top of the card. And so, especially on its not A shows. So it's a big deal in Berlin. I think you have this great straight up match. And again, what I'm actually pitching here is that Roman very clearly costs Solo, but this time not to show Solo what, but because he's afraid that Solo is going to take over. And then our next beat of this is, I think, where we get a little complex. I think we do a little bit of a diverging here. So at this point, we're heading into September. So we still got 2 full months before we get to November. So keep this in mind. So what I'm going to have on one end is to distract Cody a little bit because we're going to get into Solo Roman fully and the Bloodline shenanigans, because I think what they've done great. I don't see the Bloodline just sitting by and letting Roman do this. So I think we get a moment where Roman's like, I told you, you need me, and the Bloodline fucking lay him out is great. I think what I'd love to see is in all of this a juxtaposition of Cody being so confident that, well, Roman, what your problem is you can let anyone trust you. You have to build connections, build relationships. Oh, what's this? Randy Orton, bam. And I think we get a cool 2-month program, Randy and Cody, sow some seeds. I think there's a great story there building. Cody and Randy have been kind of building up to this since Cody came back. I think Randy capitalizing on Cody being so distracted. And I think you could go a route here. And what I would pitch is that Randy, until for a few months, takes the belt off Cody. We could almost separate the story. So September, October, culminating Extreme Rules. I think we get a little feud where Cody takes the belt. Randy takes the belt off Cody. And I think the storyline there is, this is Randy's last time in something. Cody has done everything except have that killer instinct. If Cody just cut some corners, think of all the strife he could have spared himself. And Randy tried to teach him this lesson all those years ago. And if he was a little more like Randy, he would have never had to leave. I think that story writes itself. I don't want to waste that. And so I think you get that. And almost the lesson of, you are too distracted. You're not as focused on this as I am. This is like my last shot. This is all I've got. I think we get that story from those two. Meanwhile, I think we get a full Jey Uso rerun of Roman taking Solo through the ringer of try and beat me, try and show me, and we get I like the bookend of the Cody Randy story and Solo Roman in a Hell in a Cell match. And what I would like to see is Roman beats Solo. That's his big match back. He wins. At this point, I really hope we've established Solo as like, he's not just like, he's almost there. I think the hard part, I think it's almost easier to sell wrestling fans on like, if you tell wrestling fans a guy's almost there, they'll go, no, he's underrated. He's there. If you tell them like Solo Sikoa, he's here, he's the guy, they'll go, not quite. So I think you almost have to like sell that, like, oh, he almost has Roman Reigns, and people will go, yeah, he's like at Roman Reigns level, isn't he? We'd like to be contrarian. So I think you sell that piece of it. I think that's very compelling. I think what I would like to undercut all of it with is that this new bloodline is playing a role. I think Solo loses. I think the new bloodline is still willing to like cut out Roman. Like they're Solo boys through and through. I like that piece. What I would like leading up to Survivor Series though is and this is going to be a little tough, but I think a little distraction of the bloodline side with Roman. And this is where we're going to get murky. And I don't know if they're going to go this route, but I think it'd be cool. We get to Survivor Series. Solo is on the outs because even though the bloodline was loyal with him, he went against them. They're like, we'll just beat him up. And he's like, no, this is for control of the bloodline. This is for Tribal Chief. They've come to support the Tribal Chief. I don't think Jacob Fatu gives a flying F who's in charge. I think he thinks it's going to be him someday. So this is for the good of the bloodline. I think the story of Solo getting too big for his britches. And I think we can plant some seeds here of Fatu, and especially I think you have Tama Tonga do a lot of the talking and just like, listen, we were brought in to help the Tribal Chief. And, you know, I guess that was always supposed to be you. And planting some not so subtle seeds to, well, who brought you in? Which Tribal Chief? I think we're still having that undercook. At this point, is Rock pulling the strings in the background this whole time? Or even if he was, did Solo maybe get a little too big? And I like that story wrinkle of, yes, this was the Rock's plan, but Solo flew too close to the sun. This is a lesson for him too, and everyone's okay giving that to him. So Solo's out. Roman takes over. Roman's new head of the table. Solo, not happy this. Now we're heading into November, heading into Survivor Series. You know, he'll be damned if the bloodline goes anywhere without him, and he still has something to prove. I think, you know, Roman in the last one showed him something, but this will be the first guy who openly fights him back. Who will join Solo? This is where I think you have some interesting options. What I would do here is Solo, the first thing he does is recruit Cody. I think they've almost already told the story of like they hate each other. But through this now, their common bond is, man, do they hate Roman. And I think those two coming together, and what I would do to fully put a wrench in all of this is at this point, I think Cody reaches out to some folks. I would have a couple things happen. I would have Cody be able to recruit Jay. And I think that makes sense. I think Cody and Jay being tag champions in the past, going through it. I think if anyone was conflicted and wanted it to work out in a way, that was the story they told with Jay, right? It's like Jimmy actually cut out first and then went back. Jay wanted to do his own thing, but I think for Cody would come back to fight Roman. I think if anyone would have to be okay with Solo kind of going his own and coming back, I think Jay would get it. I think you have Sammy say no. I think Sammy's never been cool with Solo. I think Sammy doesn't trust this. I want Sammy to be the clever, smart one. I think Sammy's conflicted. I think he could get beat up even in this. Maybe the bloodline take him out rather than give him a chance to join. But I like the idea of him being like, No, why would I trust anybody? I'm done with all of you. Sorry, Cody. I think this is a mistake, but I'm not going to do it. I think you then introduce Jimmy at that point. I think Jimmy is fickle enough. Like, yes, it'd be weird for him to be with Solo, but him, Solo, and Jimmy being together makes a lot of sense for me. I think being pulled in by Jay and Solo, this weird, like they all kind of hate each other and can't get along, and Cody trying to keep them together against this new bloodline. Like, will their common hatred of Roman be enough? I think this ragtag crew gives you a lot of interesting story beats without just giving us basically a greatest hits of things we've already seen. It keeps the story fresh. We keep a lot of plates spinning. I think this is Cody. Why is Cody into this? Cody is trying to exorcise the demons of the bloodline once and for all, trying to prove something to Randy. And I think Randy's whole piece was this idea of legacy. I haven't thought through as much, but Randy and Cody's stable back in the day with good old TBJ, dude, Ted DiBiase Jr., was this idea of like family greatness. And I think Cody almost hinting to that in this story of like gonna be with three actual brothers and being like, the one thing I learned from Randy is that this can be a really powerful, unique thing, but it can also eat away at you. And what we're going to tell in this story is that two of the three brothers choose to buy into that a little bit. One doesn't. So they go into this match. I think this is a showcase for all involved. I think this is the real audition for Roman in terms of, wow, this new bloodline's great. I think, I would pitch, this would be, I've been trying to, and I'm like, is this too clever? Am I doing too much? I've been ticked when I hear people say there's no way to do a War Games match with the faces coming out first. I just feel like it's, or with faces having the advantage, I should say. So now coming out first. Because I think that's just a little, like, I get it. It's better when the heels have the advantage throughout. It's better storytelling typically. I think it's a little lazy to say that's the only good way to do one type of match. And the way I would get around that here is instead of, you get the same dynamic, I think, in what I'm about to pitch, because you want the bad guys to have the numbers advantage, beat everybody up. Baby faces come in, turn the tables as they go. What I would do, though, is instead of just heels having the numbers advantage right away, I think there's some dynamics in the face side that get in the way. So, for example, what I would say is, let's plant the seeds right away as we get into this match of how do you stop, the baby faces from having a numbers advantage. They get in there. And I would say we start with, there's a few ways to do it. I think you want to save Cody Roman as much as possible. So I think we could start with, I like the idea of Roman waiting as long as possible. So I think with the bloodline members there, you start with Jacob, Fatu. And then if you're going to do that, I think the story of this is Solo proving a point. So I think Solo coming through, working things out. I think the next person is Jimmy, and Jimmy refuses to go. I think there's some message being sent to Solo of, you still frick me over. And Jimmy is not yet a full baby face. And so I think, even though Cody and Jimmy are and Jay are like talking in, I think this is almost Solo's penance, and I think Solo almost buys into that. I think maybe it wrinkles into the end, but they allow, or Jimmy makes them wait. Maybe the refs open the thing and they take too long to sign, they close again. That's not really how the rules work, but it's wrestling, so do what you want. Also, the word fantasies in the booking, as I keep reminding folks. So you do that delay, Solo gets outnumbered. Solo's still trying to prove the next one. Cody's not going to wait around, so Cody goes in. This leaves Jimmy and Jay alone, the thing to really like get on the same page, work it out. I think then Jay, and weirdly we build to Jimmy. It's like, what is he going to do? And I think we get Big Uso synchronization here, big action. I think we obviously get a big drag out with Roman and Cody at some point. Try and keep them apart. A lot of Cody Solo, or a lot of Solo Roman, I would say. And then as we build to the finish, my simple pitch here is that Cody's going to need a pin. And I really think once again, we sell that to get the pin. Cody's almost got Roman, and Roman looks to Solo and says, please. And Solo does it, takes out Cody. We get Solo proving his point. He's kind of kept the other Bloodline members in check all night. Roman needs him, helps the squad win. They beat everybody up, go home happy. So at this point, we're full heel Roman. I didn't forget the assignment. I know what we're building to, but I think we need to establish how are we going to get once again to a bloodline. So now we've got this full bloodline. We're building to Royal Rumble. And I think here, like, why would Roman think everything's cool? But that's the story we're telling, is even though he's gone around everyone's backs, even though Solo clearly brought these other members in and now has re-earned their respect, re-earned his way into the group, they go into the Royal Rumble, and this is where Roman's going to say, well, this is my trip back to reclaiming what I should have never lost. And, you know, who knows which belt I'm going to go to. Everyone should be afraid of me, because at this point, again, I would say that Randy's got one title, and that on the other end, it's Cody. And I think we get all the way through this, and this is my big pitch. I don't think this is a WrestleMania where we get Roman in a title picture. I think instead we get a big buildup of, you know, we're setting this up for the tribal chief. We get the reveal. Number 30 is The Rock. Roman's 29. You could even maybe, I think it'd be cool if it's like, well, the Bloodline have the last two picks, and Solo keeps saying it's him, and then we get a switcheroo. Solo's like, oh, it's not me, Use. And then Rock comes out. I think this keeps that storyline fresh. I think Rock wins. I think at this point in that night, I would have Cody regain the title, because we know where we're going. So you could have a little Cody Randy feud again, but Cody re-wins it here. We clearly set up Rock Cody. I think at that point, we've given Cody a little bit more turmoil. I think he's maybe at a weaker point than he's been. And The Rock is as strong as ever. So we do that. So Cody is now champ again. I think for Randy's sake, you could stretch that out, and maybe what you do and says you have him lose it, and you almost have a weird thing where it's like The Rock is challenging Cody to get back to his level. He's the final boss. He's not chasing. Cody's chasing. Let's actually do that, because I know I'm tweaking on the fly, but I found an idea that I like, which is this wrinkle too, which is I don't think I like the idea that Randy in storyline doesn't give a damn. Like, this is about him. This is his last hurrah. I think he's not going to pass the torch to Cody until he knows he's ready. We get another build up for Cody. He's ready to reface the final boss. I think he overcomes the odds in a elimination chamber match, gets down to him and Randy. He wins. I think he puts a lot of demons away there. And now firmly, we've been building it up. We get Rock. We get Cody. And where does that leave Roman? I think we write Roman out. I think we get some pretty vicious attacks. And then I think we get to see what I'm most excited about, which is Roman not demanding power, but having to ask for it. He doesn't have any support. And so I think the match I want to see at WrestleMania, and I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, I think in all of this, and we'll build to it a little bit in our War Games match. That's why I like the dynamic the way it is. I think this is where we get our Jay Roman rematch. I think you could do Sammy Roman here, and Sammy's the moral conscience who always brings people back in. But I think it kind of has to be Jay. I think Jay was the one who let it slide the first time, and I think Jay's story of, like, he at this point will have forgiven Jimmy. He's been forgiven and forgiven. And instead of what he has, Roman's all alone. And I think a moment where Roman is going to win, but is cost by Jay's allies, and Roman loses to Jay, is a really humbling experience. but then we get an embrace. And I think we start a journey of Jay trying to pursue what at this point I would have been new champ Rock. I think, yes, that's a little bit of going back and forth with some titles. But like I said, I think we need that a bit. I think Rock with the title is awesome. I think you can do some rematches there. I think I would do a Rock Punk mini feud, but I wouldn't do a full blown, like there's a lot of variables there. I think you can do a lot of cool stories with that. I think Rock beating Punk in the Rumble is another, he's stealing his main event once again. That's a nice mini story under all this. So I think you could get a mini feud there. We build up in all of this to, as the bloodline goes, I think Roman earns back some respect, and no one fully trusts him by the time we get to SummerSlam, but he at this point will be so freaking over. And I just think we get a moment where, the new bloodlines laid everyone out. They've beaten Cody to pulp. They've beat Punk. Jay's going for it, I would say, in Money in the Bank. And, Rock is once again destroying him. And then Roman comes out, not to anyone else's credit, but his own. And I think Roman at this point has been ducking The Rock. I think we almost have a crisis of confidence. And then here's our big moment. And at SummerSlam, I think The Rock is cool. I don't think we need Rock empowered that long. At next SummerSlam, I think that's where we get a story of Roman between leading up to versus Jay at Mania. This idea of the only thing you can do to like reunite family bonds is time and like earning that back and almost acts of service rather than words. And I think we get moments of him saving them at Money in the Bank. And I think we could even get some cool, like maybe he has some pendants with everybody. I would like if by the time we get to SummerSlam, he's forgiven by everyone but Sammy. I think that story comes after, and I think that story comes leading up to the next War Games Survivor Series match, where I would have the OG Bloodline at that point versus Rock's Bloodline for another shot at the title. And I think when we get there, there's some cool dynamics, but not to skip past our big thing, which is I think you can do, I don't want this title to be held hostage between Manias. There's so many cool stories. You can do rematches a million times. I think you could, even after Roman wins it, perhaps loses it again before the next Mania, set up a rematch with Cody Rock or get another Cody Roman. But I think you do it there for a couple reasons. One, I think Roman has a pretty cool history of SummerSlam. I also think the biggest reason for it is I think you want to capitalize on Roman's story hitting a peak. And I think when it's going to hit a peak is when the fans want him to, like, if we wait a whole year for him to redeem himself, rather let him take some losses. He's not going to lose any mystique, because when he comes fully babyface, I think the storyline there is we still need him to be head of the table. And this is my final pitch. This is what I thought of when I wanted to make this video, which is the whole idea of this head of the table piece is that Roman has always said he's been doing it for the family. And I want him to finally do it for the family. The Rock left this family. He came back when it suited him. He came back when the seat was already full. He's now surrounded by folks outside the family, propped up by someone who, if Roman had only maybe mentored Solo and supported him more, and I think we could even get some build here for the Solo eventually also finally see mentor in Roman, that Roman never was as much a killer as Solo was when they're in a group. I thought that dynamic was awesome. And I think maybe Solo finally being impressed and at this point respectful of Roman, and Roman earning that spot is such a good story, because I don't want to get back to what is Roman's character. I think Roman's character being like, he was afraid he couldn't earn the spot, so he made people give it to him. He kept saying, acknowledge me, because he didn't know if people would do it without him asking. And I think we get to a match where it's the rest of his family being like, it's got to be you. So, like, let's get with it. And it's almost like everything Roman's ever done is because he couldn't be his own advocate. And I think yes, I want to see full babyface Roman, but I want him to earn babyface tribal chief. I want him to earn a moment where it's him, Jimmy, Jay, and yes, Paul will return to, because I think Paul can have a cool moment of, I wasn't speaking all of these, nice things about you, these pleasantries, just for the sake of the people. I want you to hear that you are the tribal chief, the head of the table, and a moment where Roman is surrounded by people that are not forced to be there and is awesome. And I think we get that versus, once again, this group of what ends up being thugs more than family who maybe leave the rock high and dry. And I think we get that cool story. And I think there's mileage to go on that. And that would be how I turn Roman Reigns' face. And how I would have the tribal chief rightfully regain his spot as the OTC. So if you liked the video, here's what I'd love you to do. One, thank you so much for listening. Listen, we're getting into this. This is kind of new for us. Any tips or feedback you have in the comments would be great. I would love ideas for future videos. Any likes or comments you can give would be awesome. We're trying to beat 1,000 views on this. That's what we got on the last video. If we can do that, that'd be swell. We're going to have more content coming out. We're going to have AEW. We're going to have maybe some more WWE John Cena related things in the future, but only if you want to see them. As you check those out, be sure to subscribe to the whole channel for everything sports here at Flurry Sports. And until next time, acknowledge me, I guess. Thanks.